One of the biggest learnings from a marketing point of view, right, is how do you manage your brand in 42 markets?
Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you'll hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Well, of course, if you are enjoying episodes of That's What I Call Marketing, please do rate, review, and share them with friends, colleagues, families, whoever you think might enjoy the episodes. It really does help us build on this incredibly engaged community of marketers just like you. Before I get into today's episode, of course, just a reminder, our 2025 sponsorship kit is now available. Go to that'swhatIcallmarketing.com/sponsor and see how you can get involved with the show. So on to today's episode, and today I am going to be joined by Gary McLaughlin. Now, Gary McLaughlin is a really well-known face around the marketing world in Ireland. He spent many years running client services and agencies in Dublin for the likes of TBWA and Dialogue, and was highly regarded as a very talented marketer, a very talented agency guy, and actually one of the good guys of Adland. Really sound, caring, and so good at what he did. And I had the pleasure of working for Gary, so I can confirm that all the things I say today in today's episode will be 100% true. In 2011, Gary helped found Glendalough Distillery, and that was his 11-year overnight success, along with some colleagues. And we're going to delve deep into that story. It's a fascinating story of creating a brand-led growth, but also the 4 Ps. They created this thing from scratch. It's a really fascinating story. And Gary has gone on to continue to build some amazing brands. We're going to delve into that so much in this episode in terms of how you start out, how you use the marketing skills that you had. And Gary would have worked with some big brands with big budgets. He didn't have that. So how did he bring learnings with him along the way? How he thought about the internationalization of the product and the marketing, and how he's going about that now, and how things have changed and how his views have changed about growing and building great brands. So on to today's episode with the fantastic Gary McLaughlin.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Gary, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. Great to have you here.
Absolutely, Connor. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, I mean, let's go straight into it. We've known each other for quite a while, going way back. And
way back.
In my introduction, I kind of said that you're one of the sound guys out there, right? And I can see your face already, and I can't believe it. But like, we've known each other from even school days, and you were like that back then. And for people who don't know, like, Gary would have been the captain of the rugby team, and anyone in America, that's like being, the captain of the football team, and you should have been, a jock and an asshole, and you weren't. Like, you genuinely were like just a sound, and are a sound guy. That stayed with you through your career, I always felt. How do you reflect on, yeah, but how do you reflect?
To hear, but
I know, but how do you reflect on kind of that, and how that stayed with you and you didn't kind of veer into a different path, I guess?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's hard for me to talk about that, to be honest with you, but because I suppose it's who I am. It's how I've been shaped. How have I been shaped? So I suppose I have to thank my parents and that. It's just been a guiding principle, and it's guided me along my path in terms of people I've been dealing with, whether that's in school or teachers or in college, or then when I got into advertising and having to deal with like multiple different, as whether it's production or finance or creatives or ownership or suppliers, being decent and nice to people normally works. But no, look, all joking aside, I do sort of, I suppose, pride myself in sort of being empathetic, and I try to listen more than I talk. Yeah. And I think that's really important from a marketing perspective, but in life in general and relationships. So yeah, like, I suppose I am who I am. Yeah. And don't apologize for it. And it's got to me it's helped me get to where I am, I suppose, now.
Yeah, and like, I think it was kind of interesting though, because like, I think at that time maybe, and you worked in TBWA and Dialogue, but I think around maybe Adland at the time, there was a bit of a macho dickheadism going on, right? And it's a tough business as well, but you still managed to to kind of rise above all that a lot of the time. And I think for me, it always resonated with the client relationships you had. You had brilliant relationships with clients.
I was going to say that's what I enjoyed most about agencies. I actually really enjoyed being that sort of between that, because clients find it really hard. Some clients find it really hard to deal with creatives.
Yeah.
Some find them really hard to deal with strategy people. Agencies think they know better than the client. Now I am client side. That is quite frustrating. It's like, God, you really don't know my business. I learned a huge amount from the clients I worked with along the way, and the creatives and the strategists. There was some really, really great clients. We won some amazing pitches.
Do you miss the pitches? Because I remember we worked on a pitch together, and it was like the late nights. You remember all that and kind of the pressure and the. Do you miss that, or do you look back and kind of go, so look, it was for its time?
It's for its time. It's also for I actually, it was relentless. Ruthless and relentless and tough as hell. And the disappointment, we didn't win them all, obviously. So the disappointment when you put your heart and soul into something, like absolute every waking hour. Yeah. So do I miss it? Yes, I miss that getting up on your feet and having to sell an idea. But it has informed it. That's one thing that I've really brought with me in terms of. I do lots of presentations to distributors,
right?
I do master classes. I talk to lots of different types of people, different audiences, and being able to get up there and speak from the heart. So when you're presenting and when you're pitching the good agencies, the good pitches, you're living it and you're giving it your everything. And I suppose that's amazing learning for future.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. The other thing, and then I'm going to move on to kind of, the next phase after the agency life. But one of the other things that you were also known for and did was look at what was coming next, how you could kind of evolve and develop. And I remember we had Martin, who had been with What If Innovation, come over and help the team kind of figure out how to do innovative thinking and brainstorming and that kind of stuff. But you were always looking to see how you could kind of push things forward.
Absolutely. But it's why we do what we do. Like, why do people employ marketeers? Why do people employ agencies? It's to break the mold, and it's to be, well, in my world and in my head, it's to be pioneering. It's to go places where other people haven't. It's to open up minds. It's to have your absolute finger on the pulse of what's going on. So you have to be ahead of the curve. If you're not, if you're dated and nobody wants to employ you, or hire you as an agency. So staying current and staying up front.
But look, on to Glendalough, and in the intro, I've called it it was the 11-year overnight success. Right?
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating story. I mean, there's so much to it. It's a story of the 4 Ps. It's a story of brand, and going international, going global. But maybe back to the starting point of it. I mean, you'd worked a bit, in the agency world on alcohol brands. Friend of yours, Barry Gallagher, had worked in alcohol and saw this opportunity for something in the space. And so that conversation, Barry comes to you and goes, there's an idea in my head, I need some help.
Yeah, I remember really, really well. I don't think I'll ever forget it, because I suppose I've been working for 5 or 6 years on Jameson prior to that, and Heineken and Murphy's and Orchard Thieves and all sorts of brands. Barry go back, as we were in school together, and we grew up very close to each other and just good friends. And so he came to me with this idea that was alcohol related, and particularly whiskey related at the time. That's what we started out as being, it was a whiskey company. I was just like, first of all, I was absolutely all ears. I was really excited about it, and I was like, fair play to you.
Yeah.
And I could absolutely feel that and see that there was huge growth from a whiskey perspective, and from an Irish whiskey perspective. Because back then there were 4 distilleries making every brand of Irish whiskey out there, right? So there weren't that many. So there was a lot of consolidation over the years of brands. So Middleton or Pernod Ricard, Irish distillers would have owned and managed and developed many brands within their distillery. So when Barry came to me and had this proposition and this idea, I was just getting yes. I was like, yes, absolutely. So he was basically saying, look, there's going to be Jameson are laying like a red carpet. They're trailblazing. They're doing an amazing job globally, particularly in the States. So Barry sat down and said, look, I had this idea. Myself and Brian Fagan, the two guys from Davies, who were working together about developing Ireland's first craft distillery, so like an alternative to the bigger brands out there. He was like, here, will you have a look at this? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. He said, you're into this marketing brand stuff.
I was going to say, he probably did he? I know you're in this.
Oh, you're in this. And,
do you want to get you a pack of crayons, Gary?
You're in the colouring department, aren't you? Yeah. So I was like, yeah, oh, wow, this is really, really cool, really, really interesting. And I suppose where we worked at the time was Dialogue.
Yeah.
So Michael Killeen, big fan of Michael's and a mentor of mine. And he really encouraged in Dialogue people to have other interests.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what started. It was in Peter's Pub. It was over a pint in Peter's Pub. I won't forget it. Brilliant. And we sort of never looked back. I worked in agencies until the end of 2014. So for 3 to 4 years,
you were doing
both.
So
I'd sort of, as I said, sort of a foot in both boats. Yeah. And eventually you had to choose, okay, which one? And I chose the one, I suppose, that was growing rapidly, that I had equity in. So the first person I went to was Kev Keenan, who I worked with on the Jameson brand. So yeah, myself, Barry, Brian and Kevin, that was the foursome who started it, and for 4 years basically double jobbed.
Wow.
And had twins.
That's right.
And got a big mortgage that I couldn't afford, and all that sort of life stuff was coming at you. It was literally,
it was chaos.
Absolute, every single possible hour, waking hour, was either running the agency or at nights and weekends, developing the brand and launching that. So fun times. If people think it's easy,
we see that, like, because that's why I jokingly call it like that overnight success, because we get on to kind of it was everywhere all of a sudden. But just to go back then maybe to that moment, the conversation with the guys, and then landing on Glendalough, because like a huge part, and the idea of actually craft distillery, craft whiskey being a new category almost. Like people forget that now. I think that there wasn't. They were the big boys, and that was it. How did you land on the brand and kind of this brand story? Because that was going to become fundamentally core to almost many of the elements of success. I feel anyway, looking
absolutely
in or out. In.
Yeah. So some of it was fortuitous, some of it was not landed on a plate, but fair play to Barry and Brian. They came to us with the name Glendalough, and I'll be really honest with you. When I heard it initially and knowing whiskey, I was like, that sounds too Scottish, because there's Glen. There's so many Glens. So, and I was like, oh God, but we have lived with it for a while, and then we got into our agency mode. So it was like, okay, let's research the hell out of this Glendalough, all its meanings, all its history and background, etc., etc., etc. And I suppose coming from agency land, the biggest benefit of working in agencies is that you work on so many different brands in so many different categories, so products, services, all the rest. But being able to go, okay, that really worked well for PlayStation. That was amazing with Jameson. Oh man, what the LVA did for that ad, like that radio, whatever it was, like that, all those little bits, you take them with you and you go, okay, when this is your brand and this means so much to you, then you go, okay, what works? And also we tiny budgets, so this wasn't a massive big brand play as in brand awareness play. This was like, this brand has to speak for itself. It has to jump off the shelf, which I mentioned, but then it also has to have depth. It has to have meaning. For a brand to be noteworthy and to have real substance, it needs a number of different things. You need to be able to have, like, in 1 or 2 seconds, what is it? Yeah. But then you need to know, okay, well, if you're 15 seconds in front of somebody, what is it? If you've 30 seconds, if you've 2 minutes, or if you've a whole website to write, or a book to write about it, you need all that depth and knowledge and authenticity. I believe in nearly nothing else in terms of having that authentic brand and having
something at the core.
So important. I learned so much about St. Kevin, and there's so many great stories around that we were able to really dive into. And so it was very, very Irish, obviously, but it was Irish in a more contemporary way, as in we were looking back at it with a lens of, what's going to resonate now, like in 2011. What's going to work with whiskey and gin drinkers.
Yeah, and it did, like, it's hard, because I love, I mean, the kind of the logo design, that was so clear. Like, that was amazing when you saw that in shops and stores, and it was big, and it was, you know, it was very distinctive. But were you going in kind of, we need to make something that is visually distinctive as well, and even in terms of the actual logo itself?
So that's absolute down to Kev Keenan in terms of his knowledge and design skill set. He actually said Kevin has been made smaller. I can get back to that, but he's been made smaller on the newest iteration. That's purely coming from consumer research. But to launch, he'd be a massive, and I am a massive believer in iconography.
Right.
And, you know, as I said, with very, very, very small budgets. So this had to jump off a shelf. And there's method behind this madness as well. The cruciform.
Yeah.
It's been scientifically proven that your eye is drawn to it.
Stop.
Yeah. So it's not just the great story of St. Kevin. It's also, okay, well, how do we grab attention with this? You know what I mean? Visually.
Yeah.
Visually,
and it did, though. It really did.
Yeah. Visually, first of all. But then, as I said, there needs to be layers down behind.
And then for the product perspective, because again, this is a joyful, full, like, marketer's dream, in the sense it wasn't just a brand play. And, you know, Mark Ritson talks a lot about, like, liquid death, and it's, you know, marketers are fawning over it because it seemed to be doing everything. But for me, this is actually proper 4Ps marketing. And the product side of things, then, whiskey isn't a product you just switch on overnight.
No.
It takes years. It has to age. So you had to then come out and market first with, was it Putching, gin, then whiskey?
Putching, whiskey, gin very quickly afterwards.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there's reasons behind that. Depends who I'm talking to. Do you want the brand story? Or the
real story?
I'll give you the brand one first.
Okay.
So we started with Putching because that's what, back in the day with St. Kevin, that's what the Irish and the monks were actually making. They weren't actually aging it in barrels for 3 years and a day before they could call it a whiskey. So that's the brand reason.
Okay.
And then the next was whiskey, which is aged, and you need more time and thought, and the whole oak. And you know, Wicklow being covered with oak and all that, and we really embraced that with the future product, which was our pot still, which was aged in virgin Wicklow oak, which is great. And this is very true. We had our distillery in Wicklow. I read a Irish Times magazine, I think it was 2013 or 14, and I was having my coffee one Saturday, and it was an article about this amazing lady who brings people out foraging in the Wicklow Mountains called Geraldine Kavanagh. And so they forage, and then at the end of the day they sit down and they eat what they've picked. And it's just like, at the time we were thinking of a gin. Gin was, we could see it was growing globally, but particularly in the UK, across the water. And you could feel, from an Irish perspective, it was coming. Like, at this stage now, there was only cork dry gin.
I was going to say, this wasn't like we didn't have the Irish gins. No.
But we could. So when you work in the industry, you see trends, you feel. And
you're
trends,
absorbed in it as well.
You know, we were looking across the UK, and gin has exploded. Like Sipsmith gin and Monkey 47 was being started as well over in Germany, and it was a real groundswell. So I read this article, and I was like, wow, we're thinking of making a gin. How cool would it to be? Let's talk to Geraldine, because like, if we put botanicals that are grown all around the distillery into our gin, how cool would that be? So rang her on the Monday. She said, come out foraging with me the following weekend. So we went out foraging with her the following weekend, had the best time. And along the foraging trail, we said, look, any chance we could put what we're picking here into a gin and make a Wicklow gin from Glendalough? And she was like, yes, yeah, absolutely. And then a couple of minutes later, she came back and she said, just so you know, those botanicals are going to change as the seasons change. And my marketing brain went into overdrive.
Yeah,
I was like,
oh my, you said
wow.
I'm like,
oh wow, okay, so that means we can have a spring, summer, autumn, and winter gin. Yeah. She said, yeah, and they'll taste really different because amazing. Had never been done before. So that's what we started to do. So our first gin was, I think, 2014. We did a summer gin, and then 2015 we did spring, summer, autumn, winter, and it literally, they changed as the season changed. And like bartenders, off license owners, people in trade were like, this is amazing, this is cool.
But it is like that. I mean, that idea of being able to kind of evolve the product and build a product, because that's kind of getting into kind of the 4Ps of where the product had to evolve, the product had to start from somewhere. So you know, have this idea for the brand, this idea for the product.
Yeah.
You were then able to, you're kind of able to position as a premium brand then as well, pricing wise.
Yeah, you know, the big boys buy in bulk. So when you're smaller and craft and you're doing things by hand, and you know, if you don't charge a premium price, you'll be out of business very quickly.
Right.
So there's a needs must element to it, but also we very much started out as we are a premium brand. Okay, we are not a value brand. We are not an everyday brand. We are a premium brand, and even in this was in 2011 we started out. So like the country.
I was
going to
say, like,
shape.
yeah,
The country
people
wasn't
weren't kind of going spend the money.
No, but there was this looking for better, less but better, and trading up to something that's, you know. Okay, so like in the States, from a Jameson point of view, okay, this is brilliant, love it, drank it when I was on my frat house, whatever.
Yeah.
Shots of Jameson. People, you know, I've seen research where people they didn't know what Jameson actually was. It was like it was just like, oh, I'm having a Jameson.
Right, okay.
It's Irish whiskey. It's what? You know. So, then they become a little bit more educated, really like Jameson. So what's next? Like, it was that sort of progression in the alcohol, the spirits industry. It was that sort of chapter where people were better.
You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Yeah, because a lot of it, like, it's future focused in lots of ways. You weren't kind of going, here's what's here now. There was like this thing happening, and we can go here and be almost ahead of it, or at least in early and innovative and thinking ahead. And that requires that insight and knowledge, and you know, great that you felt that it was, you know, yes, in your world, but you know, four of you wasn't going to make a business. You know what I mean? You could run a business, but you're not going to make
absolutely,
one. So
no, we're not going to drink it all.
Like boxes and boxes.
Yeah.
But I that requires bravery and all those like lovely words. But I like the price premium thing. I think is, again, needs must. But like that was. Was there nervousness at any moments where you're kind of going, "Oh, lads, we've outpriced ourselves," or you know,
like yes. I remember one retailer telling one of the founders that's never going to work, and they became one of our best retailers. It was like, remember what you said? So look, yeah, it was taking a punt, definitely, but we could see that there was an appetite for premium spirits out there, and that we were hopefully going to, you know, get in front of the wave that was coming. And yeah, we did take a risk. It was a punt. It was scary, but it was fun, you know.
And then getting it out into the world, right? Because again, brand, product, pricing, you have to get then into the shops, into the bars, and starting first in Ireland. Like, how did you go about that? Because again, this was a new category almost.
Yeah, it was tough, and there's no other way of doing it. Certainly back then, there was absolutely no other way of doing it. Like DTC, direct to consumer.
Yeah,
that wasn't.
Yeah.
So there wasn't that online sort of opportunity. So one of Barry's cousin, Donald Gallagher, who is now Cobblestone's head of commercial in the US. He's the best salesman I've ever worked with or met. We nabbed him from another distillery who was selling whiskey in Atlanta, and he got that distillery from zero to many cases in a very short period of time. He moved back to Dublin, and he literally pounded pavements.
Did he?
For the guts of a year when we launched Putching. And you know, he organised the world's first ever Putching cocktail competition, and it was that sort of groundswell where bartenders were looking for new and different and premium and Irish and craft. So it was just lovely,
perfect storm.
Yeah. So we then took that and we thought, okay, we can't just make our livelihood in Ireland.
Yeah,
we have to. This is a global brand. So we've set out to be a global brand. Like we set out to be. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah,
we set out.
That was the ambition always, to be global.
Absolutely, and also, where do you build a brand from a spirits point of view? You build it in the US.
Yeah.
That's where brand value really is created. And that's where the bigger manufacturers will look to from a mergers and acquisitions point of view. They'll look to, okay, who's doing it well in the States? And so Donald crossed the water again, went back to the States, based himself in Boston, and sold Putching. We sold Putching in Boston. Our distributor, who thankfully who agreed to distribute us, they they couldn't pronounce it. We had to phonetically write Potcheen on the bottle,
right?
Because Americans like,
what is it?
Poteen, yeah. So, and his name is Donal O'Gallagher. So, Potcheen being sold by Donal O'Gallagher. Try to ask a few Americans to repeat that. So we were up against it, but no better man. And in fairness to our distributor, they took us in. Interestingly, though, it wasn't the Irish. The Irish did try it and pick it up, but it was more that hipster, that bartender, that cool, that different, that new, that embraced it. But it was really tough. Really tough.
Like that and then, not easy. The States, like, is such a huge market, like just huge, like, I mean, and I remember at that time hearing some of the stories and kind of hearing going to the States and going, oh my God, like that's just a massive task. And then on top of this, you have kind of on the ground, but what were you doing kind of maybe more broadly in the marketing sense? Because you say there weren't big budgets. I mean, how were you telling the story?
So it was very organic. And again, it was looking back to agency land and going, okay, what worked, what didn't, what can we do, what budgets do we have? So you have to cut the cloth, right? So we believed we had this really good brand that jumped off the shelves, that had a really good story that we could tell. And we had a really great sales guy on the ground. How do we make this work with limited budgets? So honestly, it was bar to bar. It was liquor store, as I say over there, liquor store to liquor store. But it was like, hey, let's think cleverly about this. And I'm sure you've heard about a lighthouse strategy before, but it was like, okay, we can't do all of Boston or all of Massachusetts, nothing like it. We just don't have the funds. So why don't we focus on what's an area within Boston where people live, but they also go out? Okay, let's over-invest in this area. Just really, really focus on this area, and within bars and liquor stores, et cetera, and let it develop from there. So basically, so let's say there's 1,000 bars in Boston. Okay, we can't be in 1,000 bars. So, okay, Cambridge, Somerville is where we picked. And, okay, Cambridge, Somerville, there's 600 bars. Okay, we can't afford to be in 600 bars. Okay, what are the four bars where the hipsters, the people who are pushing this agenda are going, okay, let's really focus on those 4 bars. Okay, and those 4 bars, liquor stores around there. Okay, there's 12 liquor stores around there. Okay, the best point of sale we can afford, tastings as many times as you possibly can, pop-up nights in the bars that are nicely branded, really cool swag, for bartenders, making sure the bartenders and liquor store owners and the people who are working there understand the brand, have that 10-second, 15-second thing that they can repeat. So you just you educate and you invest wisely within these areas. And then from a sort of support point of view, from a marketing point of view, social media. So it was like, think about social media back in sort of 14, 15. It was
so different.
Different. Yeah. But what we did is we literally dropped a pin, on that account. We're having a pop-up night there. Okay, tell everybody who likes cocktails or whiskey, gin, whatever it is, within a 2-mile radius, that are, you're in your demographic, that's happening there. I'm talking like $50 though, like we're putting behind that, or maybe $100.
Wow.
So it was like really, really hardworking, as in Donal working his ass off, and literally that's how we did it.
Wow.
We went, okay, 4 bars, okay, next year we're going to have another 2 or 3, next year we're going to have another 2. And literally what happens is each one of those bars become a beacon, and they're like lighthouse strategy. So they are influencing the bars. And then we went we went state by state. And now it's hard, and it's difficult, and it's because you need somebody on the ground. The distributor is never, ever, ever going to do it for you. Biggest mistake Irish spirits manufacturers think is, I have a great distributor, I'm sorted.
No.
Not a chance.
They'll move the stuff.
Until you get to a place with a distributor where I'm really making money for them, that's then when they'll take you seriously. But if you're a startup, and if somebody's never heard of your brand in the States, why would they sort of get behind you? Because they might have a massive brand like Aperol on their books or something like that. Of course they're going to.
That's the way they're going to. Follow the money.
So you have to do the hard work.
Was there a moment where, like, it kind of went from that to accelerated? Like, was there a thing that happened that made it kind of go to the next level?
Yeah. Again, I suppose you make your own luck. But I was going to say I was lucky. But no, it was more than that. So Barry and Brian, from their Davies days, worked very closely with Davin Nugent, another amazing marketeer and CEO. Now, so Davin would have been Copperberg, White Claw, Mark Anthony, and that. So Mark Anthony, a big Canadian company run by Anthony Von Mandel. So people maybe over this side of the pond may or not have heard of Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Yeah.
And then White Claw,
yeah.
but huge. Like I'm talking massive, right? So Davin's remit was to set up Mark Anthony International. That sort of tipping point was Davin went over to Boston and literally saw the great work Donal and us as a team were doing. And at the time, we were the third biggest Irish whiskey in Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
Like for literally, like you were up against Jameson, you were up against Tullamore Dew,
Yeah.
you were up against like the big Bushmills, the big boys, and we were third. And he was like, going into our lighthouse, we obviously directed him to our lighthouse area.
Everyone's talking.
But he was like,
Wow.
this is happening. This is actually, they're moving the needle. So that's how we grew further. That was the moment where, with the support of Mark Anthony, so they invested back in 2015, 16, and then from there it just grew. So when it's very expensive to put people in market, they were able to
help fund
us
it.
do
Right,
that.
that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
So
it wouldn't have happened without that lighthouse strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It
amazing.
wouldn't.
And then ultimately they acquired the business, and I was reading at the time, I think it was Davin that said, the pioneers of craft Irish whiskey and gin, Glendalough have quickly established themselves as Ireland's leading premium spirits brand. Like a truly differentiated offering of both whiskey and gin, uniquely positions the company for success in many other international markets. And I think, I don't know if it was at that moment or ultimately, maybe it was by then, you gone into about 40 markets. Like that's phenomenal. Like
I think when I left, it was 42 markets we were in, and you do say that to people, and they go, "Wow!"
Yeah.
And I suppose everywhere from like New Zealand to South Africa to, all over Asia, Russia. I'm very proud of it. I said, but I'm sure you might ask me learnings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest learnings from a marketing point of view, right, is how do you manage your brand in 42 markets?
It was exactly what I wanted to ask you.
So you can do your best and you can put your best foot forward and you can write brand guidelines and you can do your best to agree plans with 42 different markets. But I hired an amazing person called Sean Windsor, who's still with Mark Anthony. He's now working on White Claw. But yeah, it was a small team. And did we manage the brand brilliantly in 42 markets back then? I'll be honest and no.
Yeah.
How could we?
Yeah, it's so hard.
So while it was great, it was another needs must. As in, if somebody, at the time, Irish whiskey was on fire.
Yeah.
And gin was on fire. So we were literally getting calls from people going, do you have any? Would you like to come into our market? We will distribute it. Like the difference between that and now in this climate is like chalk and cheese, where people are like consolidating and they're not taking on new products. So it was a different age. But so we needed the volumes and we needed the money. So that's why we did it. It was good outside looking in, but from a marketing perspective, from a brand guardian perspective, made me really nervous.
It is such a big challenge for any brand globally is to go like local nuances or any things, and everyone wants to change stuff and say we're different here.
They do,
right,
absolutely.
but we all drink through our mouths, mostly, don't we? Like, do you know what I mean?
But they, we do. Most people, So I suppose, look, the only thing we could really do, we sort of call it a bird feeders, and you can go in and you can take what you want from. So we always have, and we still do have like a really great online resource where, okay, you're looking for point of sale, you're looking for templates for social, you're looking for logos and fonts and but really strict brand guidelines. Now, but how can you police and control them? Really difficult for Estonia. Are you doing the right? Tasting in a liquor store on a Friday night, are you saying the right thing? Or do you have the right assets?
Yeah, that's hard. That is hard.
Really hard. Really hard. And that's. But look, that's.
Yeah. And you can only do what you can do. You have to have the guidelines in place and you make it easy for people not to have to recreate what they want. Yeah. So then, obviously, comes a period of, working with Mark Anthony, getting to the next stage, and then you kind of deciding where to go next, and to today really, and kind of the band is back together in some ways.
The band is back together, yeah. No, in fairness, Barry and Brian started Glendalough. Barry and Brian have started Cobblestone Brands, and we all knew we had a second album in us. All like, it was like, yeah, look, it was delighted. It was literally just before COVID when Mark Anthony took the full stake in Glendalough, so 3 or 4 weeks before COVID. So we were like, oh my God. I stuck around in Mark Anthony, and great learnings, huge learnings. So like, you can imagine, they're a trailblazing, a young enough company that are going places and really well funded and huge aspirations for growth and brand development, and a very marketing led company as well.
Yeah, I get
very
that impression.
marketing led company. So it was a great place to immerse myself in for a couple of years. So it was a couple of things. It was COVID, there was non-competes and there was stuff like that. So it was time where people could stand back and reflect. But I just wanted to, first of all, I genuinely love and will always love Glendalough, the brand, and I was very much the brand guardian, and I wanted to continue that. I learned an awful lot from, there's some Nicola Barrett, fantastic. I worked with her. She came in from Jemison and learned a huge amount from her. I didn't come up the traditional way from a Unilever perspective or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, let's see what I don't know. Which was, and I sort of treated it like a bit of a masters or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I said, okay, what? So that was great. Really enjoyed that period, that chapter of my career. But when the guys asked me to get involved again, and the band was getting back together, it was hard to say no. It's really exciting to be able to go, we made so many mistakes. We fell over so many times. I know it was a success, but you make so many to get there. You just fail all the time, which is great because you learn so much from it. And so to be able to take all that knowledge and go, okay, if we're doing it again,
here's what we do.
Yeah.
Any things, without giving away secret sauce, but any of those things you kind of go, yeah, this is what we're doing differently this time.
I don't think it's giving away secret sauce, but I suppose a couple of things. That 42 markets thing. Right. We are now, thankfully, well enough funded, some great shareholders, to really focus. So at the moment we are in Massachusetts and we are in Florida with our gin.
Which is Four Corners.
Four Corners American gin. And we are in both those markets and some of the top tier rum rest of world markets with our rum. Okay, so with our star and key rum. So that's very deliberate.
Yeah. Okay.
Very deliberate. Right. Not to go too wide. Go deeper. Go way deeper, and take the learnings. Take that lighthouse strategy learning and go deeper in those markets. Always have somebody on the ground. We now have a playbook that we know works. Stick to it. Even in these, I won't lie to you, difficult times out there. The headwinds are strong.
Are they?
Oh yeah. Big time. Okay. Big time. People aren't spending what they used to, and they're trading down, unfortunately, rather than trading up. It will come back. The US is our most important market. Hopefully things will start climbing up. But for everybody, for Pernod, for Diageo, for all the big ones, everybody's taken a bit of a dip. But look, it makes you have to work harder, and it really tests your playbook.
Right.
Does this actually work? Yeah. So we're doubling up on it, and we're very confident that things are going in the right direction. So learnings. So that was really focus rather than go wide. We did way too many SKUs. So we had way too many different types of whiskey and gin, actually. So at one stage, I remember Barry telling me how many barcodes we had. And it was just like, oh, what? 40. So we have 3.
Right, okay.
3. We've 2 rums and we've 1 gin. Again, very deliberate. So I told you my story about the Geraldine and the spring, summer, autumn, winter. We did a blackberry, we did a rose.
There was a pink,
the
rose one. I remember that one, yeah.
We did loads of different gins, and then we had a huge amount of whiskies. Again, that's great, and people are like, "Oh, that's really well done. That's great."
Yeah.
Every single one of those takes. It has to have a plan. So that's the second learning. So, and then the third, I'd probably go with being the type of people we are, from a marketing background, from a creative background, from an agency background. Myself and Kev in particular, really good at developing content,
right,
and developing really, really, really good assets. If we're self-critical on ourselves and looking back at Glendalough, we did too much.
Right.
We got bored too quickly.
Okay.
Agency people get bored very quickly. What we're doing now, learning, is use data to go, okay, well, what is resonating?
Yeah.
So what is resonating with people? What's actually making them buy or click or engage, whatever? What's the content? Don't get bored with it. Keep using it.
Yeah.
And then learn from it. So that worked. Right, let's do some. So rather than just having this array of content and keep doing more and more and more because we get bored. Just
be consistent.
Be consistent and stick with what works. So I suppose there's three that we've
useful.
definitely taken on.
Yeah. And and going back into it, I did. I was thinking, did you have a bit of a kind of because you know what's ahead of you, right? In some ways, but maybe some of this stuff is actually helping you not have those kind of panic moments. Going, oh shit, what am I doing?
Look, I suppose it's like habits. It's like anything. When you keep doing it and keep doing it, it just becomes natural.
There's no like cold sweat waking in the middle of the night moment.
No. Look, I think entrepreneurs will always have. They'll have a need and a desire to move forward and keep moving and all that sort of stuff. But you need that fear as well. You need a little bit of fear. You need a little bit of... It's nearly what drives you on. If you were complacent and if you were like, sure, this is going to be grand. I've done it before. We're grand. It's going to fail. Right. So you need to always be on your toes. You need to always be looking at what's coming down the line. We talked about it earlier, like you need to always be on top of trends, like we do a quarterly trend analysis. So you have to, also, shareholders will give you a fear. P&L will give you a fear. Targets will give you a fear. So no, look, that never goes. It's important that you're always a little bit scared. And that's what drives us on. Yeah.
Brilliant. Why obviously gin was kind of in maybe the DNA, but why rum was it? Was it because it's kind of it's about to is it big? Is it coming? Is it
so about 20 years ago? Every year in those 20 years, I've been told rum's going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
Like that's especially from an industry point of view. Those drums are getting louder, and you are hearing it more often. Like different drinks have their day.
Yeah.
So and depending on the market. So gin, UK, Ireland is definitely only the strong will survive now, 100%. So it's flattening off, but at a much higher, base than it was. Tequila at the moment in the States
that's the one I heard.
Outlandish.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said to us, why haven't you come out with a tequila? You're starting a new company. You're not. Yeah. The reason we haven't come out with a tequila.
I was going to ask about tequila because I did hear about tequila.
One of our core principles is: do we have a legitimacy to play?
Right.
So we sort of look at it in terms of, okay, is there a market opportunity? So is something trending? Do we have a legitimacy to play within that category? And with tequila, we don't. As in, we don't know The Rock. That's our term. He has his own. Yeah. No, but it's very celebrity-led. It's very celebrity-led. It's really hard to get into, so the cost of entry is huge. And while from a gin point of view, we have Glendalough, and we're very much about, again, one of our principles is a sense of place. Yeah. So Glendalough, everything that came from the Wicklow Mountains and all that sort of stuff, we took the idea and we went, okay, well, what's that on steroids? So like in the US, there's lovely gins from Maine and from California and from Massachusetts and from Vermont. But you know what? There's never, again, this is this pioneering.
Yeah.
This is gin is still growing in the States. Premium, super premium gin is still on an upward curve, which is great. So, but nobody's ever done a gin from all over. So botanicals, just American botanicals, just from all over. No, that's never been done before. Amazing. Okay, let's do that.
Amazing. And that's the four corners.
That's the four corners. Yeah. So literally we've gone to the four corners of America to get that. So legitimacy I'm talking about. So there's legitimacy for us to be in gin. Go back to your question. Rum. Brian Fagan, who's one of the founders of Glendalough and Cobblestone, his sister is married to a great guy called Nick VA. Nick VA is 8th generation VA of the VA family who've run a place called La Bourdonnais Estate in Mauritius. Okay. So Brian's sister's married to him. Okay. And they've been making rum for many, many years. Incredible, beautiful, just close your eyes, picture paradise.
On there.
That's Unfortunately, I had to go for.
I was going to say, I'd be also doing rum.
It was
Mauritius,
hard work. Got going down to Mauritius and making rum is really hard work.
Like a boggy Wicklow.
On a rainy, horrible day, bringing press up to the shores of Glendalough and telling them the St. Kevin story. versus going to the beach and in the catamaran. I know. Yes. So that's our authenticity. That's our connection. So Nick is part of the company. He's in the company. He's part of Cobblestone. So Nick is our rum maker. Nick is married to Brian's sister. So it's in the family. So again, there's that authenticity there. He picks us the very best casks they have because we age our rums. You know, they do everything on his estate, on the estate that his family own. So like they grow the sugar cane, it's crushed there, it's fermented, it's distilled, it's aged, it's bottled. Everything is done in this really small sort of 1,500 acre estate. So it's amazing. So there's our authenticity, and with our new product development as well. There's some authenticity, and there's you know, I think, as I said from the very start, when you peel back a brand, it has to stand on its own 2 feet and something there. And that, I think, is what companies like ourselves bring to the table. It's much, much harder for the bigger guys to have that.
Yeah.
You can have the best focus groups, you can have the best idea generation sessions, you can work with the best agencies, but that's what they lack.
Yeah.
Is that real authenticity and core. You know, it cannot be manufactured and made up. Of course it can, but I think that's something that we do that other people can't do.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot of celebrity led, I mean, even in the gin category. Have you ever looked at that as a route? Like,
we've definitely literally 100% thought about it, and
Brian O'Driscoll gin.
Or very yeah. Well, that's a good story there. Yeah, no, of course we've thought about it, and it's a different way to do it.
Yeah.
Of course it is. It's not our way. Not saying we'll never do it.
No.
Look, you never say never. But what we try to do is literally build it from the ground and have that real, authentic, true stories we've been talking about. But yeah, no, we've been lucky to have we've some shareholders who people would know, and you know, a lot of people think we may have gone and looked for Brian O'Driscoll back in the day, but he saw, going back to the cruciform, he saw St. Kevin on the back bar in New York. He asked a bartender who he knew very well, the bar owner, I never seen that. What's that, Brian? That looks sort of cool.
Yeah.
Irish, but cool. And he said, could you put me in touch? I'm about to retire. This sounds like a really good thing to invest in. So that, I can't call it a spade, like that gives you real, I think, authenticity and that's from a different audience now point of view. That's from, you wouldn't be shouting about that in terms of a consumer perspective, but like from a distributor or a future buyer, acquirer, or whatever, like that's like gives gravitas. Because
it was credibility, wasn't it, at the time? It was like they're no longer this kind of dirty, uppy thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people saw that and kind of went, "Oh, Brian O'Driscoll invested. Like he's switched on." Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, you know, listen, I guess, like, what's the ambition? Maybe Cobblestone first, and then you.
So Cobblestone, I think we, as I said, I've talked about the playbook before. I think we're pretty good at doing what we do. Headwinds or no headwinds, we're moving boxes, we're building brands, and we've got some really interesting NPD coming down the line. We enjoy what we do. It's a great Dolly Parton line. Find out who you are and do it on purpose. I think we've all found out who we are, and we all really enjoy doing what we do. We've got a mix of people who are really good at what they do. They enjoy what they do, and we hold ourselves very accountable. But we're all very ambitious. We're driven. We've that entrepreneurial makeup, and getting out of bed isn't a chore. So I think when you find that, not everybody finds that. And to be honest, in my agency days, I didn't have it, even though I love great ideas and challenger brands and developing great creative. I wasn't jumping out of bed every morning going woohoo. So I think that's a great place to be in. We want to continue that for as long as we possibly can. We want to build global brands. We want to build the next Glendalough or two or three. That's what drives us on. That's what lights the fire. So I suppose, let's build a number of global brands and see where that takes us. And God, I suppose when you then go, okay, that's Cobblestone, what's my own personal, it's very much aligned. From a career point of view,
as you're saying all that, I'm like, that has to be,
from a career or from a development point of view, that's exactly aligned. And I suppose if you can get that alignment in life, that's a bonus.
And you're constantly, I mean, with all the stuff you're doing, you're constantly learning. You're back to what I was saying earlier on. You're never stopping trying to figure out the next thing. And, I think that and you know what, again, it's a brilliant Irish story that Irish people can and should be proud of. I mean, here's like, again, Glendalough's become a global brand. Here you are, Irish guys figuring out how to build more global brands. And you'll often hear about the Diageos and all those that are doing it, and that's great and it's wonderful. But here's a group of guys and team of people figuring this out and being really successful and being really modest and sound while doing it. And I think that's what I've never heard anyone kind of say, Ireland, what we're like, we knock people when they're there. We love doing that. Yeah. I've never heard that once about any of you guys. And that's a real testament to the group of people that you are and what you've created.
Thank you. It's nice to hear. I think it goes back to really enjoying what we do and being very driven, holding ourselves to very, very high standards, not accepting anything less, getting the buzz out of it.
Yeah, and not being assholes. Do you know what I mean? Because people can go driven people, you're not. Like, you're great guys, and thank you so much for taking the time out to chat to me about the Glendalough story, but also Cobblestone brand story, the gins, the rums, and whatever's coming next. 2025 is going to be a massive year for you and Cobblestone. So, Gary, thanks a million.
Thanks, Conor. I appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
No, it was great to chat.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks a million.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Gary McLaughlin of Cobblestone Brands. What an amazing story that Gary's had. The build-up of Glendalough Distillery into such a phenomenal brand, and now he's at it again with Four Corners Gin, and so much more coming in 2025 that Gary wasn't quite able to tell me about during the recording, but I know there's lots of exciting stuff coming for the brand. And what I love about the story that Gary has is how he's taken all his learnings from agency days and applied that to brand growth, but also for any brand that's out there that's thinking about growth. And often, look, I've had the privilege of talking to people who work in big brands, and when you hear that, you're kind of like, oh yeah, of course they've got big brand budgets. But what was great about this episode was hearing how Gary and the team have actually grown with smaller budgets and have really thought about their approach to growth and how it has worked for them. So, incredible episode, really enjoyed it. Great always to catch up with Gary, but it was really wonderful to sit down in this context and hear his story. And I said it a lot in the episode, but it's so true. He is just one of the soundest guys that you are going to meet. So that's it for this episode. Do tune in, and we will have a new episode coming shortly. And if you subscribe, you won't miss when that episode lands. Of course, you can check us out on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, where we share updates on the episodes and shorter snippets from the episodes. So please do like, rate, review, subscribe. All of the above really helps us build on this amazing community of marketers. And don't forget, our sponsorship kit for 2025 is now available. If you'd like to find out more about that, you can send me a message on LinkedIn and I will get back to you. So for me, your host, Conor Byrne, thanks as always for tuning in.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.